Welcome to Brunch with the Boston Buddies. Today's Friday. Looking forward to the weekend, although every day seems like it's the weekend these days. Today, we have a very special guest, Ron Tabb, 1983 second place winner of the Boston Marathon, Olympic qualifier 1980, and pretty much all-around nice guy from my conversations with you today. Welcome to the group.
Thank you.
So Ron, how are you doing these days? How's life down there? You're in Florida right now?
My wife and I, we've been down here for 3 years now. So
Okay.
we came here after we sold our bar restaurant business in 2017. So.
Okay. And what's keeping you busy these days?
Well, I have since being down here, I coached college or coached high school for a couple of years.
Yep.
And then I've started coaching adult runners and helping them realize their full potential. So I've had several people who have reached out to me about taking advantage of my expertise and knowledge in running, and so that keeps me quite busy. I have in November, with the encouragement of one of the athletes I coached, said that I should take this to a different level. And so we developed a website where we do online training or online coaching now, and have clients in Oregon, California, Wisconsin, New York, and here in Florida.
Yep. And what's the name of the website for people that to sign up?
Okay, it's Runners Training Academy. And you can go on the website there and check out some of the folks that have left testimonials from their experience with me as athletes.
Right, Runners Training Academy. Okay, that's great.
Runners Training Academy.
Okay, and then, yeah, you have several Boston buddies are your clients, Letty being one of them.
Yeah.
And actually, I believe Boston Buddy 1A, Rob Freed, is one of your. Is he one of your clients as well?
Yes, Rob approached me. I believe it was in January about getting ready for London, and then Boston was kind of a backup. And so I've been working with Rob since early this year, and it's been great watching him, because it's funny because he ran Boston in 1983, the year that I finished second, and now we're connected. It's crazy how running will connect people. But he asked me if I would be able to help him out, and unfortunately, with the virus, our marathon goals have kind of changed to virtual 5K races, where he just ran a PR, and he does most of his running on the track, but he just ran a 2014, and that's his PR for several years.
Right. Yeah, he was in 1983. I think that was his best race in Boston. He had 2:35:11 was his time. Something was up that year, because 1983 seemed to be the fastest year for Americans out there. They had 84 Americans that broke 2:20, which was unheard of.
Well, the conditions were favorable, and one of the reasons I believe that we saw so many fast times that year was because what did we have going on in 1984? We had the Olympics that were going to be contested in the United States. So obviously running at that time was very much on the forefront of what everyone was doing. We had more qualifiers, I believe, in 84 for the Olympic trials than we did in 1980 for the Olympic trials. And we had over 200 qualified for the trials in 1980. So probably at 1983, 84 was I'd say probably the peak of the U.S. running scene.
Right. Yeah, and in 1980, yeah, you ran the race to nowhere, as Gary Finelli liked to call it. I interviewed him earlier. He was the one. He had the shirt, the race to nowhere.
Yeah.
That what was that like, running in that race, just knowing that there really was no, at that time you already knew that there was going to be a boycott, and you were,
Yeah, Benji Durden and I, we just had a conversation about this when we were at the Olympic trials up in Atlanta
Mhm.
back at the end of February. And my approach towards the 80 Olympic trials was probably different than most. I said I'm going to take advantage of the opportunities between December and May and capitalize. I really didn't. I wasn't going to put much emphasis on the Olympic trials because we weren't going anywhere.
Mhm.
And that 1980 team or that 1980 Olympic trials, there were a number of really good athletes who didn't participate. Bill Rogers being one of them, who would have been
Right.
back. Gary Bjorklund wasn't there. Tom Fleming. I mean, there were a number of players in there who didn't participate that year. I decided to, because I was top 10 in New York. I think it was seventh or eighth in '79 at New York, and that I was back in October. And we knew that there was already discussion that the trials were going to be going nowhere. So I said, I'm just going to have fun, capitalize on my opportunities. So I went to Honolulu in December, finished third there. Frank Shorter was just a couple seconds in front of me. Dean Matthews won Honolulu that year. Then the next race I ran was the Houston Marathon, which was in January. And I ran 2:13 there, set a Texas state record. And it was basically, it was for financial reasons that I decided to do that. Then
Okay.
a few weeks later, I decided to go to New Orleans, and that 2:13 at the time was a Texas state record. Then a couple of weeks later, I went to New Orleans, ran 2:11 flat there, set a Louisiana state record. Then went to Boston and finished third that year, 1980. Bill won Boston. And, there was just really nothing motivating me. I'd lost the interest in the Olympics at that time because of what we were doing with the boycott.
Right.
So even the week before the trials in Buffalo, I had a nice appearance speed to run the Cleveland Refco marathon. And so I ended up only running 20 miles of it because I was beginning to develop plantar fasciitis. So I ended up having to drop out at 20. But I went to the trials because I was in Cleveland already, and it was only an hour to Buffalo from there. So I ended up going to the trials and finished fourth, ran 2:12 there. And I'm guessing had I not run all the races I did from Honolulu to Buffalo, things would probably been a little bit different. I probably would have been more competitive. But then again, if we were going to the Olympics, we would have had Bill Rogers there. We would have had Tom Fleming, Bobby Hodge, a lot of the guys from the Greater Boston Track Club who didn't run. Gary Bjorklund would have been a major factor. So, I still have mixed emotions. I'm not very happy that we boycotted in 1980 because we don't know what the results would have been.
Right.
But I don't think some of us, it was our best race.
Yeah. Bob Hodge is actually going to be on the show on Monday. He's joining us.
I saw that.
Yeah. And your training partner back in the day was Alberto Salazar, right? You training with him?
I began training with Alberto in '83.
Okay.
I was going through my divorce with Mary during that time, and I'd had a 2-year hiatus from focusing on my career and spending coaching and spending my energy with coaching Mary. And then when we decided to go our separate ways, I began coaching under Bill Dillinger. And Bill Dillinger, as you know, was Steve Prefontaine's coach and Alberto's coach. And that's when I really made a big breakthrough, because I was a pretty good runner. But when Bill started working with me and incorporating some things that I use actually as a coach myself now, I went from being a 2:11 marathon guy to a 2:09 marathon guy. And, I have to attribute much of that to, with Coach Dillinger and training with Alberto, because some of our workouts were just crazy. I mean, we were doing 5 miles on the track and sub 4:30 pace, faster than a lot of races were being run back in the day.
Wow. And they weren't intervals. It was just 5 miles straight.
It's just a 5 mile tempo. Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty fast.
Yeah. That's just one example. I mean, there was just some intense workouts.
Okay. And that's really what propelled you. But I mean, even if you started with him in 83, even before that, 81, you won the Paris Marathon, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So you must have been doing something right.
Well, yeah, I mentioned to you I had plantar fasciitis at the 80 Olympic trials, and I ultimately had surgery on both of my feet for plantar fasciitis. I was coming off, I'd run Boston in 81. I had to wear training flats in the race. And I ran 2:19. And the only reason I ran Boston was to see if I could hold up physically the injury that because I just had surgery in January. And so I didn't have a lot of time to recover for Boston. So I ended up going there, just using it as I don't call it a workout, but I wanted to just see, it was a test run to see if I could hold up. And then I'd been invited to run Paris, and went back to Eugene, did, felt pretty good about running 2:19 under the circumstances. And I was able to go to Paris and pop off a pretty good race. Then during that, just before I went to Paris, I had met Mary and we started going out. So Paris was actually my last good marathon until we divorced or separated. We weren't actually divorced when I ran Boston in 83. Okay. But so I went, I had a nice 2-year stretch where basically, my best race was a 2:15 at the Nike OTC.
Yeah, Mary, we were talking Mary Decker Slaney.
Right.
Your wife, right? She was an Olympic runner as well, correct?
She was, yeah. She was, when I started coaching her in 81, she was American record holder in the mile and the 1500. And she looked at herself as a 800, 1500 meter runner. When we began training together, I'm going, wow, you have the potential to be, go far beyond that. Because, I mean, she was running some unbelievable long runs. I mean, she was running 10-mile runs in 55, 56 minutes. And yeah, that's pretty amazing. It's 40 years ago. And I told her, I said, I think you should look at or consider moving up to the 3 and the 5. And both, she set the world record for the 3,000 and the 5,000 both times on her first attempt. And she also, we got back from a trip from Europe and I encouraged her to do a 10,000, and she set the world record in the 10,000 at an all-comers meet in Eugene.
Wow. So, impressive. And you were coaching her.
And I was coaching her, like I said, from 1 until 83. Okay.
Yeah, I keep trying to coach my wife, and yeah, I think we would probably split up if I coached my wife. But 1983, pretty big year for you because you came in second in Boston. You were right there. Greg Meyer was 1, and then Benji. It seems like that was a great year for the Americans. Other than you also ran Beijing, right? Beijing Marathon.
Well, here was here's 83, because 83 is by far my best running year.
Okay.
So Boston was 209. That was in April. 5 weeks later, I came back and ran Sydney, Australia, and ran 210, high 210s down there. That was a few weeks. That was I believe that was the first week of June. And then we had the World Championships 2 months later in Helsinki. I went to Helsinki, ran 213 there, and this will be out in the book, but the 213 wasn't indicative of the shape that I was in. I was had a personal issue. Mary shows up with her new boyfriend at the World Championships at the Athletes Village, and so I wasn't in a good mental state. The World Championships, I thought that was pretty tacky how she handled that. So then I came back a few weeks later, and Eric Stahl, who's a runner from Sweden, finished 4th at the World Championships, and we had a race in Beijing. And it was a big invitational. Eric was there. Bill Rogers was there. Gary Bjorklund was there. I can't remember a couple of the other big names that were there, but I destroyed the field and won there in Beijing.
Yep.
And Eric ended up finishing 2nd. So it kind of indicated to me, if I was capable of beating Eric the way I did in Beijing, that I should have been in contention for a medal in Helsinki. So, and then a few weeks later, then we had the New York City Marathon, and that's the famous Rod Dixon, Jeff Smith finish.
Right.
Yeah, I finished 3rd there in 210. So 83 was definitely a good year.
Yeah, that's very unusual though, that to hear professional runners running so often, so close together. Like it just doesn't happen now. Like you were running every other month, or you were running major races real close to each other.
Yeah, and it's crazy that people are so afraid to do that. Of course, that probably shortened my career by a few years, but I probably because it was shortly thereafter, I began having problems with sciatica. So, but I don't know if I would do anything differently than what I did back in those days. It was. Maybe I could have extended my career a few more years. I did qualify for the Olympic trials again in '88, and I came really close to qualifying again in '92. So I think if I could go back and do anything over, I probably would have sought out a coach to make sure that I wasn't doing some of the crazy things that I was doing training-wise. Because from 77 until 83, I was self-coached. And an athlete, a lot of times, are their own worst enemies. Because, they have the tendency, to do more than what they should be doing and not resting the way they should rest.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it all depends too on the athlete. We've got Gene Dykes in our group. He's the 72-year-old gentleman.
I know.
But he'll run a 100-mile race a couple of weeks before a marathon, and there's nothing.
That's crazy.
It's just, he's amazing, great guy. But then I guess, and so after I guess your professional career, you had the honor of coaching if not the best American runner in Meb Kapslecki, correct? And coaching
Right.
high school? Yeah.
Yeah. Meb and I was a college coach in San Diego, and the college where I was coaching, we didn't have a track facility. Okay. So used the high school track where Meb was enrolled. And one day he was sitting, I knew who he was. One day he was sitting up in the stands, and when the rest of the kids were out training. And so I came up and I introduced myself because he didn't know who I was. I went up and introduced myself to him and asked what was going on. And he was telling me that he had a little bit of an Achilles problem. So I said, well, I think that, doing a little massage therapy on this and making sure that you're icing and just stay off of it for a while. Let's see if we can't do something to help you get back on the track again. So that's where it all began. I did some massage therapy on his calf and the soleus, and we just developed a friendship from there.
Mm-hmm.
And I coached him from, I don't know the exact, 91 to 93 or 92 to 94, somewhere in that range. And I just saw, and I was still running at a pretty competitive level at that time. And, I told Meb, I said, Meb, you have unbelievable talent. I mean, you have the potential. By his senior year, because he led the nation in 4 different events. And I said, Meb, you have the potential to become one of the greatest distance runners that our country has ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
I said potential, and as we mentioned before, or as I mentioned this to you earlier, you have the potential, but potential is only one thing, and realizing it is an entirely different matter. Yep. And I said, so many distractions that can get in your way. There's so many things that can happen that can prevent you from realizing that. And being disciplined, because as I kind of described my career, I wasn't exactly disciplined because I was doing more than what I probably should have been doing. So, one of the things, I was very conservative with my approach towards coaching Meb, and I didn't want him doing too much so he would find himself being burned out by the time he graduated college. So I took a soft approach with his, for the 2 years I worked with him when he was at San Diego High. And he took that discipline to college. He found a good college coach in Coach Larson, and the rest is history. I mean, I just, it's a lot of my friends. A lot of my friends on Facebook have seen he gave me his bib number from the 2004 Olympics that he wore during the marathon. Oh. And it's signed, to thanking me for everything over the years. So it's pretty, for me, it was very emotional when he gave me that. It was very emotional watching him in 2004, because I had told him, and I came across an article that was at when he was a freshman at UCLA, that he sent me a newspaper clipping and a letter. And I had predicted that he would go on and go to the Olympics, and he fulfilled all the things that I thought he was capable of doing.
That's a great story. Yeah, you ran in the 83 where American won, and there hadn't been another American win until Meb.
Exactly.
2014.
And that's another, for me, that's a pretty neat story, because I was a part of that last winning Boston Marathon where, we had an American win in 1983 when Greg won. Yep. And we went, 31 years before we had another American win Boston. Mm-hmm. And to know that, I was a part of his early career and mentoring him and, advising him on how to approach his training, and then to see him win Boston. He's done so many things that Meb is just, and he's like my son that I didn't have. He's just an incredible person. But to see him win Boston that year, especially after what had happened the year before, was remarkable.
Yeah, he just set his mind on something and was going to win that race no matter what it seemed like. He was determined. Yeah.
Yep.
He's come to the Philly Marathon the past few years, so I've had a chance to meet him and talk with him and sit down with him. He's extremely personable, very down to earth, just a nice guy. You never know that he was like this world-class runner or anything. He just very humble, and he's always interested about you or asking about yourself. He doesn't talk about himself or anything.
No, and that's it. I mean, he's just a remarkable human being. I just, like I said, I love him like a son. You know, so we were together in Atlanta at the trials, and we got to spend a lot of time up at the trials catching up. So the nice thing is now he's down here in Florida. He hates Florida, but it's nice because we, you know, now we have opportunities to get together occasionally.
That's great. Yeah. I was at the trials this year as a spectator. It was great. I'd never watched the trials before. I will go back every 4 years, wherever it is. That was just amazing atmosphere. It was just electric.
It definitely was. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were also chatting a little bit about what you're doing now, and kind of with the COVID and all the other issues going on right now. People are struggling a little bit to find motivation, and races are getting canceled. You're trying to do what you can to help everybody out there right now, right?
Yes. Well, you know, and that's what I was looking at. We're seeing this and seeing so many people affected by what is going on. A lot of folks not able to put food on their table, and you know, a lot of folks not able to pay for coaching. And that was one of the things that one of the first things I did was waive my coaching fees for the folks that I've been working with, because you know, if they were adversely affected, I didn't want them to stop doing what they were doing, because we'd made so much progress. So, but then, you know, that I didn't feel like that was enough. And so I brainstorming, I'm going, what can I do? I mean, I'm looking at these long lines for like soup kitchens almost, and, you know, folks in their cars going to food banks. And going, oh man, what can one person do? And I didn't really have an answer to that. So, brainstorming back and forth, and I'm going, okay, you know, maybe there's a way of tying something in here with the running where folks can benefit from a little bit by the mileage that they're running every month. So, I was talking to my wife, and I, you know, came up with, you know, let's start it off with run 5 miles, feed 5 people. And then we decided to expand on it and go run 100 miles and feed 100 people. So what we're doing is you can go to our website there, and it's on Pledge It. But what you do is it's a run-a-thon, and you can create their own campaign. It doesn't cost anything. So let's say, for example, you know, we're going to begin this May 1st. So what you do is, you know, to keep yourself inspired and motivated, you go out, and let's say you're May, you do 150 miles or 100 miles. And so you have a sponsor, someone who will pledge 25 cents or 10 cents or $1 or $100 per mile that you run, and that goes into the food bank that will ensure that people have food on their tables in the evening.
And this is on Pledge It? Is that the pledgeit.org?
No, go to our website. Go to the Runners Training Academy.
Okay.
And then the links, follow the links in there, and it'll show you exactly how to get to that point. All the proceeds, 100% of it goes towards helping folks out.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. It just popped up on the website. Yep. I can see it. That's great. That's, you know what? That's just it. This is it's a strange time. Obviously, this has never happened in the history of the world, it seems like, where everybody's locked down. But you know, there's still a lot of good coming out of this. A lot of good things like what you're doing. These other, you know, people are now adjusting, at least for now, and they're creating these virtual races as well. And you've got some virtual races too, right? coming up?
Yeah, yeah. Back in the early or mid-March, when we began seeing that, and I was telling the folks that I'm working with, I said, I have a feeling that we're going to see these races canceled. I started with Tokyo. I had athletes that were supposed to run Tokyo. Then I had athletes that were supposed to run Boston. Letty ended up running LA. She was able to get her race in before all the other races were canceled. But so I'm going, man, what do I, because some of my folks were losing interest in running or in training. And I said, well, why don't we do some virtual races? And we can do those, anywhere. You can do it at any time you want to, but we're going to switch over from marathon training to 5K training. And we've had a tremendous amount of success with the athletes doing their virtual 5Ks. I have a lady in New York that is 56 years old who just ran 1934. A gentleman in New York, he just ran 2014. And so I'm seeing people getting PRs in these virtual races. So it gives them something to look forward to. And we're probably going to move up to a longer distance because some people have suggested they'd like to see some 10Ks or 8Ks. So, I'm trying to be creative with keeping people looking at continuing their base training. And once the racing season does start back up again, then we'll be better prepared for that if the people keep putting in doing the base training that I'm asking them to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a love of the sport at this point. You know what I mean? Just people getting out there, they're not able to run the actual races probably for the next few months, but they can still get out there and run. And, we're trying to keep things active and busy on our page as well. And keep, we're doing a push-up challenge for the month of April, just to keep people moving. Gene's actually doing a 5K challenge next Saturday, May 3rd. It sounds similar. He challenged one of our younger runners. So it's 72-year-old Gene versus 30-year-old Emily Morley. 5K.
Hey, that's good though. But that's how we're going to have to keep people going forward. I mean, it gives them something, to look forward to, and it's something like these interviews. I'll be watching the interview with Bob on Monday, so and it should be inspirational. Take this opportunity to continue building your base and your foundation, because the better your base and the better the foundation that you build, the more you'll be able to do once the season begins again. And it will begin again. It's just we don't know when it will happen. So you just keep pounding the pavement, keep putting the miles in, and stay focused. Look at your short-term goals and your long-term goals.
Yep. Yeah. Monday is the 20-week mark. 20-week training plans start on Monday for Boston.
Yeah. So, and that's good. Again, we're hoping that the Boston is going to occur, but they just canceled Berlin. So who knows what's going to happen? I mean, that's we just don't know. I would be cautious about. It's going to be harder to train. Summertime training, it sucks anyway, because when you're running in 90-degree weather, there's just not a whole lot of fun, especially down here in Florida. Doing the summer training. Some of these folks down here, they're doing 4:30 morning runs, and if you're doing a 15-mile run at 4:30 in the morning, without your coffee, it's a rough run.
Yeah. I'd much rather run in 20 degrees than 90 degrees. Yeah.
I would agree with you. I'd rather go out and run when it's cold and when it's hot. So
yeah,
you can dress appropriately for 20-degree weather. When it's 95 degrees down here and 90% humidity, that's one of the reasons I left Houston, because I trained in Houston back right after college. And then I said, if I have any chance of making the Olympic team, I'm going to need to go someplace where the weather is a little more conducive to training.
Right.
So that's how I ended up in Eugene, Oregon. You know, that means I'm going to switch gears here a little bit.
Sure.
So, you know, still there?
We lost your camera for some reason. We can hear you.
All right.
Oh, we lost you. Ah. Stay tuned, folks. Hold on. Let me message him. Give him a minute. May have to start this back up. But while we're waiting for him to rejoin, what Ron was discussing was obviously trying to keep people motivated and stuff. And I did post a poll up the other day on our page regarding whether people would be interested in a cross-country relay. So that is actually something that's in the works right now. We're trying to put together a course for the cross-country relay, so stay tuned for that. Oh,
Are we, okay.
Hey, you're back. We can hear you and see you.
Sorry about that. My buddy Scam just interrupted our conversation. You know, Scam Likely.
Oh yeah, Scam Likely. Yeah, Scam Likely called me during this interview too.
I don't know. So, must have been so. But where I was when we got interrupted, one of the things that I like sharing with especially younger runners, because so many kids, are looking for, they'd love to think that they could go to Boston one day and win Boston or finish in the top 10. And a lot of folks don't they look at a guy who finishes second at Boston or third at Boston, and they think, you have to be a 4:10 miler in high school. My high school PR for the mile was only 4:42. So when you look at that and you look at all the kids, they're high school kids or even college athletes, because even in college, I was only a 30-minute 10K guy,
Mm-hmm.
And it's about putting the base and the foundation and dedicating themselves to a goal, believing in yourself, don't worry about what anyone else thinks, stay focused, stay the route, and just keep just pounding the pavement, put the miles in, be smart about how you're putting your miles in,
Right.
make sure you're getting the rest and nutrition that you need to succeed. And all those things, if you believe in yourself enough, you never know what the end result might be.
Yeah, it sounds similar to what you were talking about with when you met Neb. The potential was there, but realizing it and getting through all the mental barriers is probably more challenging than the physical. A lot of times people will actually put up phony barriers because the people around them will be like, oh, you can't do this or you can't do that. And it's just a matter of getting rid of all the distractions and trying to stay focused, like especially in these times. It's just stay focused on the training. Don't worry about what else is going on in the world, because there's a highly unlikely chance that what else is going on in the world is going to affect you personally.
Yeah, well, this is a good opportunity for a young athlete right now, and I don't know how many in your audience that are, high school age that might be listening to this. But one of the things that they can do right now is just to go out there, make sure they're doing their 5 to 7 to 8 to 10 mile runs, and have a plan, have a short-term goal and a long-term goal, and once the cross-country season starts back up in the fall and the track season, if you've done your homework and you've put in the mileage and you've worked on building that solid base and that solid foundation, you're going to be so far ahead of the rest of the kids that didn't follow that advice. So this is a good opportunity to catch someone that might be a few seconds in front of you.
Exactly. Yep. Catch them while they're sleeping.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you had also talked about a book, correct? That's coming out.
Well, I've worked on it. I've been working on it for a couple of years, and
Okay.
There's a lot of research. I have 4 bins of newspaper clippings and articles. Someone just sent me a video of the 1978 and 1980 Boston marathons. I mean, so you have to go through that and sort through what you want to basically edit what you want to put in the book.
Right.
The book it's like Bob Hodge. I mean, his book is amazing, and it talks about the trials and tribulations, basically, of what a successful athlete has to go through, and success doesn't come without making sacrifices. And so the book is intended to be inspirational and motivational.
Mm-hmm.
Going from being a 442 high school miler, walking on as a freshman in college, and the 10 freshmen in front of you have faster times than you do, and pushing yourself and believing in yourself enough to overcome. And you talk about, like, Meb, for example, what he has accomplished with all the challenges that he had as an immigrant coming here from and so I discussed, my relationship with Meb. I discussed the relationship with Mary. I discussed the relationship of that I had with Adidas and with Nike. And so hopefully when the time comes and I can go on the book signing tour, which I thought Houston, because Houston was my first marathon win in 1978, that was where I was anticipating, having my first book signing tour. But as it turns out, we don't know when that's going to happen. So,
well, keep us posted. Yeah, keep us posted. You got almost 11,000 people in this group that are an audience for your book. We'd love to.
I was supposed to be at Boston. I was going to be a guest speaker on Saturday and Sunday for Boston, and obviously that got canceled. So it would have been my first time as a guest speaker. I was on the first session. I was going to surprise Meb, and I was going to be speaking with Meb, and he had no idea it was going to be a surprise.
Oh, wow. Well, you just broke the surprise, so you can't do it now.
Now we don't. There's no, we don't know what's going to happen now. So.
Right. Yeah, that's the book from Bob you're talking about, the Tales of the Times. He's going to be on Monday, and it's similar. And then we also now just landed Becca Peasy. She's got a children's book, but it's another one where it's just an inspirational book for kids. Becca Peasy's the first woman to do the 7 continents in the seven marathons, 7 continents in 7 days. She holds the women's record for it right now. So
that's crazy. I don't even know how you could do that physically.
Yeah, and yeah, I think Michael Wardian did it a couple of times, and he was sub 250 or so every single marathon, 7 days in a row. And he's about my age. He's in his late 40s. He's not a young guy.
That's incredible, though. Oh, man. So, that's Bill Rogers and I hold the distinction of having the American record for winning, the only 2 Americans to win major marathons on 5 continents. So that I like being in anything that I can be in the company of Bill Rogers is great. I mean, I'm so honored, because he's one of my idols, when I was an athlete.
Well, which continents do you have to go? Because is Antarctica one of them? You could probably get that record.
Africa and Antarctica. My marathon career is over with now. I don't have too many. I've had too many injuries over the years, so most of my exercise is biking now. Gotcha.
Well, it's a lot easier on the body, put it that way.
Definitely.
Running beach.
I miss those hard 10, 15-mile runs. There's nothing more exhilarating. You go out and just pound the pavement for a sub 50-minute 10-mile hard run. I just love doing those.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. Yeah, for the non-runners that might be watching on this, like, it's hard to explain. When you're doing it, it's horrible. But when you finish and you're just exhausted, and you're keeling over and you're sweating, it just
yeah, I never looked at it from that standpoint. I looked forward to just punishing people on training runs. I just there's I mean, I get out there with Alberto and we would just punish each other. It was, you know, there's some, I don't know how to explain it, but it's exhilarating when you go out there and, you know, you've got a, pardon me, you've got a guy like Tom Byers, who's a 350 miler, and you know, you're doing in and out repeat miles. And, you know, you're burying, I mean, just putting the pedal to the metal and putting the hurt on them.
Right.
So, and same thing with races, you know, it's just, you know, you get into a race and you like to be able to punish people.
Right. It's the competitor in you. Yeah. It's just fun. It's just fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. Just sort of make sure. So runnerstrainingacademy.com is where people can
Runners,
contact you.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to reach out, you know, to me on a personal, I'm always available for that too. So I'm not gonna, I don't want to put my phone number up there, but if they want to, you know, if there's something I can help someone out with, have them reach me through the, if I'll give you my email address. I'm old school. It's rontabb@aol.com. So
AOL. Okay.
it's old school.
Okay. Well, that's very nice of you. Very kind. Maybe, hopefully, are you planning on going to Boston in September if it's on?
I've been invited to speak again at Boston. Yes, so I'm planning on being there. So yeah, they've asked me to speak there if they do Boston.
Okay.
So
well,
I have to be there.
all right. Well, if you're out there, hopefully we can meet up. We had a shakeout run planned. We were going to have about 500 people for our shakeout run. So everything's up in the air right now, but it would be great to cross paths while we're out there.
I can do that. I can't run 26 miles. So.
Well, we'd love to have you. That would be great.
Yeah. So yeah, Benji's trying to get me to. Well, so I was with Meb at the Olympic trials. And the race director there was trying to convince me to come back and run run New York, because it's their 40-year anniversary.
Yeah.
And I'm going, it sounded like it was an intriguing idea, but so I started doing some runs, and I'm going, oh, my body just won't let me do it. So I'm not going to go back and run New York, but I could do a 5K, a shakeout run with folks.
There you go. Or come to Philly. We have an 8K. We have an 8K option when they do the Philly Marathon. So
okay.
So, it's a great race. You get this. That's where I'm from. You get to see a lot of history, and you get to start and finish at the Rocky Steps, and you run up the steps at the end.
All right. That sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you again for your time. I appreciate it. And this was great conversation. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you again for the virtual runs as well.
And your listeners, be safe. So let's get through this thing and get back into a racing season. I can't wait till I get my folks back out there running again, racing again.
I hear you. All right. Thank you again. And so long, everybody.
Bye. Okay. Thanks, Vince. Appreciate it. Okay. Bye.